What's up, everyone? This is In-Camp Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Hepler. It's a nice sunny day outside. I'm sitting at my kitchen table recording this today. The dogs are sleeping. I started making some PA Dutch pot pie right behind me on the stove. I actually got out this morning with Rue, my bird dog. He's a little French Brittany, and we got to look for some woodcock. The bird seasons haven't opened yet, but we were out there just kind of off leash walking and training, no actual hunting. But unfortunately, I found a 5-acre piece that was um, pretty loaded with woodcock last year, but a lot of the brush and bushes and stuff got put through a wood chipper and shredded up. And unfortunately, it's covered in all kinds of invasive grass and 1,000-mile-per-hour weeds and vines. So not looking so good there. I might have to go find woodcock in a different place this year. But it's been a pretty good fall. I'm recording this intro very early because I'm trying to get ahead of the game for different activities in October. So today is actually September 30th. This episode today, the actual date is sometime in the middle of October. I think the 16th or 14th is airing. But I'm excited for you all who are listening. The PA bird seasons are about to be underway. The pheasant stocking program has already started. The youth season was last week. I'm pretty excited. I love going out in the fields with a bird dog, and I can't say I don't love the pot pie that's behind me. I tried a couple bites. I would like to say that, just so you're aware, there are a couple glitchy sound things in this one. There was a little bit of an echo. I tried to get rid of it. It's not too bad. So it didn't distort anything. If you would, at the end of the show, leave me a review and a rating so we can get this podcast out there and get it shared around. I'd really appreciate it. And make sure you check out our guest on his acknowledgments at the end. This is a real fun episode, and I actually learned quite a few things myself. So enjoy the show. This is In Camp Podcast. All right. Welcome to In Camp Podcast. I'm on the horn with Josh Ruiter today. We're going to be talking bird dogs, a little bit of Upland, I hope. This is our first time meeting, so good to meet you, man.
You as well, man. I appreciate the invite and looking forward to having a fun conversation with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you got going? You're a busy guy, man. I saw you were doing some competitions earlier this month.
Yeah, we head out every end of August. A friend of mine or a couple of friends host a field trial out in Montana just before the opener. And so we were out there doing that.
Okay.
Had a good time out there. I run my buddy's dog for him. I handle the dog. I've done some training with the dog. It's a dog named Royce, owned by my buddy Jake Face. And he ended up winning the whole cup. So he first place
Nice.
dog for the weekend, which is pretty sweet.
How old is that dog?
He just turned 3 this year. So
Oh, so
young dog.
Yeah, very cool. So, Josh, you have a background with, as far as your social media goes, you're involved with the Upland Disciple, Trinity Bretons, and Redemption Bird Dogs. Those are all your platforms?
So growing up, my dad actually owns Trinity Bretons.
Okay.
He got his first 3 French Brittany's when I was 2 years old. So I've been around him since as long as I can remember. I see your little guy there in the picture.
Yeah, he's hearing me say dog, and he got up off the couch to go.
Moose is in the office with me as well. So
Nice.
get down, buddy.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I did that with Dad for a long time, Trinity Bretons, and then probably 3-4 years ago, he wanted to focus back in just kind of on breeding and hunting because he was buying a business and just didn't have the time for training and field trialing. And I was living in Philly, so I couldn't really be having litters and that kind of thing on that side of the process. So I started Redemption Bird Dogs about 3 years ago as kind of a training and handling operation, primarily French Brittany's, but I've had some pointers and some setters and stuff like that in as well.
Cool.
So that's what I really love to do, is train and compete with dogs and go find wild birds and hunt dogs with people, for people, however it works out. So that's what I've been doing with Redemption. And then I started, actually, I don't have a platform yet for it necessarily because I don't have a whole lot of litters myself. But I did start Sin Busters Bretons this past year, and I had my first litter, 4 pups out of that litter. So that'll be part of my website that's coming up pretty quick here. But yeah, so those 2 things. And then the Upland Disciple is really kind of just born out of a desire listening to, basically through COVID, the litany of pop-up podcasts that happened as we all had more time on our hands.
Yeah.
Um, and one thing I noticed is there was a lot of good stuff going on there, but not a lot of necessarily intentionality about talking to high-end dog trainers about how to develop your gun dog.
Uh-huh.
Um, so I wanted to really focus on that element of the upland world and pointing dogs in particular, but also some flushing dogs and retrievers and stuff. But getting the perspectives and the insights, and the tips and tricks and tools of the pros kind of into the hands or into the ears at least, of the amateur. I got one or two dogs. I want to make sure my dog's the best I can make it. Help me kind of thing. So
Uh-huh.
that was sort of the brainchild behind it, and it's turned into something that's really cool and fun. And um, I don't release as many episodes as the next guy, perhaps, and that's primarily because I want to make sure I sort of maintain that integrity of talking to primarily pros and stuff. And that this summer, I don't know if you've chimed in this summer to any of the episodes on there, but we're doing this cool little summer shorts thing where me and Jake, the guy who actually owns that Royce dog,
Yeah.
um, are reading off what's been submitted to us by four of the top kind of recognized trainers in the country about their method for doing kind of each step of the dog training process from puppy to finished broke dog.
Yeah, I've gotten to chime into a couple of your podcasts, and I really enjoy the content that you put out because it's valuable. The dog stuff is, I mean, one of the things you always talk about is like in the beginning in the intros is that you don't want to spam people with your content. So I'm kind of like, yeah, I mean, I get that with dog stuff, because you could have a million guests on that think they know what they're doing with a dog, but there's like, I'm not a dog trainer. I'm a novice. You know what I mean? But I could get on a podcast and talk about how I have trained. I've had a lab in the past, and I did really well with her, and I have a pointer now, and I'm doing pretty good with him. But I'm not a dog trainer.
Right.
You know, you could get a lot of just kind of filler content, but I like what you do with the space because you are having Jake on to talk with just you, or having some professionals on that can actually give you this is what will work and this is what doesn't work. Um, and bird dogs are very specific. This is not like sit, stay, come stuff.
Right.
So I really do enjoy that part of your show. So what you've kind of before you've been all over the map. Like you just said, you lived in Philly, but you're from Iowa. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm from Iowa. From Iowa, I moved to Jamaica for 2 years to work with. I'm a pastor by trade.
Okay.
So moved to Jamaica for 2 years to work with the church.
Yeah.
From there, I went to DC for 5 years, to pastor. From there, I went to Philly for 5 years, and then just about a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago now, I moved to Eastern Ohio, where I'm at now.
Nice. Are you a pastor still?
I am, yep. So yeah, I'm actually sitting in my church office right now.
Nice. Very cool. Are you like a youth pastor? Are you associate pastor there?
I'm the head pastor at a little Lutheran church,
Very cool.
just outside of Youngstown.
Nice, man. What got your start in the outdoors though? Have you been hunting and fishing like your whole life, or is it just bird dogs or
Yeah, from before I could even really walk, man. My parents, my mom worked days, my dad worked nights when I was young. I'm the first of five kids.
okay.
Excuse me. So dad would get off work and he'd throw me in his bird pouch on his vest, and we'd go upland hunting before I could even really keep up. And then just from there on out, I out with dad 4 or 5 days a week as a little guy, feeding dogs as a little guy, crawling out the screen door to climb into the whelping pen with the puppies, from the time I was, 1.5, 2 years old. So it's always
That's
just kind of
awesome.
been a part of my life. And I will, I'll admit, like college, high school, college, I sort of walked away from it when I was in sports and stuff like that. Also, that was when bird numbers in Iowa were super low. So the impetus to go out there with the dog and not see anything wasn't as high, at
Uh-huh.
that time. And then kind of late college is when I got back into it. Got my first personal dog that ended up staying with my dad because I moved to Jamaica. But yeah, and so from there it's just kind of built little by little. Uh, and then really since probably 2016 is when I've really gone hard after it.
Nice. Isn't it kind of funny how when I'm doing these podcasts, most people who talk about their background are like, when I went to college, I kind of walked away from it. And I don't know if it's like you said, maybe it's because the bird numbers were low and it wasn't quite as interesting, but it's just that time in your life where you're kind of like, trying to screw your priorities on right, I guess. And then
Yeah, for
when
sure.
when you come back to it, you're kind of, well, why didn't I prioritize that?
Absolutely. No, I think it's that. I think it's, you know, sowing your wild oats, so to speak. When we all go to college and we're out of mom and dad's house, we want to be our own human being for a little
Hmm.
while.
Yeah.
And then we come back to the realization actually mom and dad weren't as dumb as we thought they were when we were in high school and early
Yeah.
college.
Yeah.
But then like secondary to that too, just like a fact of life is, upland hunting is not cheap,
No.
to get the gear, to get the gun, to get the dog. And then my school, I had to live on campus all 4 years. So like there's nowhere to keep a dog unless you have a friend in town who's willing to house your dog.
Right.
So just like all of those complicating factors made it l- less likely to be a priority. And for me personally became sort of a non-priority until about my senior year of college.
And what were you in Philly for? Just were you in school in Philadelphia?
I was an associate pastor at a church just outside of Philly for about 5 years.
Oh,
So,
okay. I kind of grew up in that. I'm in the southeast corner of PA, so I'm in
oh, all right.
like I guess the closest city I'm closest to is Reading.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of grew up going to church in at an Assembly of God church in Reading, and did that thing. So that's it's kind of funny because a lot of my hunting buddies were kind of born in that area and still in that area. So it's a lot of fun. Get to do a lot of stuff in that town. But it's kind of, I mean, you've had a lot of stories, because what I hear you talking about a lot is when you started training your dog Moose. He's your first dog.
He's my second dog. So the first one I got was when I was a senior in college. Her name was Tess. It's actually Moose's mom. Because then
Okay.
when I moved to Jamaica, Dad sort of voluntarily inherited her because I couldn't take her to Jamaica with me,
Yeah.
and she never ended up leaving Mom and Dad's place again. And she was a good breeding dog for Dad and a good hunting dog. And then when she was about 6 or 7, I was in DC at the time, and I wanted a puppy out of
Yeah.
her, before she was too old. And so that's where Moose comes from.
Yeah.
And that test dog has kind of carried on Dad's lineages as well. And Moose has kind of been the namesake for the kennel for a while.
Yeah. What I find really cool about when you lived in DC, you started training Moose there, and you really had to leash him most of the time.
Yeah, it was a lot of long lead in a little park next to our apartment because we lived just outside of DC in Maryland, but a lot of long lead stuff. And then you've probably heard me say it on podcasts, but trapping pigeons in DC and training right next to the Washington Monument early in the morning,
Yeah.
where I could let birds go. And I had to use this little like fake whip thing to simulate, a cap gun because I didn't want to get sniped from the White House for shooting a cap gun off. You know what I mean? So it was a wild season of life, but it worked out, just fine in the end, I suppose.
But it's really unique because you don't, whenever you hear like, oh, you need a whoa post and all this like gear to train a dog, and you did it with a little whip and a leash and a couple pigeons that you caught. I think that's really unique because a lot of people that are really interested in bird dogs, not everybody has an acre to train in their backyard or lives in a rural area. I mean, some people have a 10 by 10 backyard, you know, and maybe a common dog park that they can take their animals to. So when you're talking about training in that scenario, what are some important things that you could tell somebody about training in a tight environment like that?
Yeah, I'll just describe sort of how I went about it because
Yeah.
I didn't really have a great program set up for it because it's not the ideal scenario necessarily.
Right.
I didn't have access to birds, until I started trapping pigeons at friends' places in DC. Um, so I ordered, I think it was 3 pheasant wings off Amazon and a little tube of that pheasant scent juice.
Yeah.
And I tied fishing line around the end of the pheasant wing and I'd drag it out in the back little area we had behind our apartment, and I would hide it under a bush or whatever. And I'd let Moose, kind of cut loose on a 30-foot rope. So I still had, the ability to control him. And he just learned how to point there naturally because I would throw it up for him and let him retrieve it if he would point it.
Hmm.
So it was super elementary style training. Just do what you can with what you got, kind of stuff. But
Right.
teaching him to use his nose was sort of objective one for me in that phase of life. Is if he can point a bird, at some point we'll be able to get out and into big country and let him learn how to run and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Um, and it set him back a little bit, to be honest with you. When he went to his first trial at 18 months old, um, I had sent him to a friend of mine who was a pro trainer out in Illinois, for a month before that just because he Moose had gotten to see, I think, 3 pheasants at a preserve, in Virginia at
Mhm.
that point, and that's the only, birds that he had really seen other than pheasants, on fishing wire and a couple of pigeons.
Yeah.
And the guy told me, he said, "You have one heck of a dog here in the making. You're gonna have to teach him how to run." And right now, the joke now is Moose is about 1,000-yard dog off horseback,
Mm.
so he definitely learned how to run over time.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll
Um,
say.
but for sure, having to do all that work on a leash early on, held him back a little bit as a young dog, but it turned out just fine. So
I don't like, is it pretty like, if you're doing your own hunt, do you like when he runs that far?
yeah, like when we were just out in Montana after that field trial, and we stayed for the opener in a couple of days, and I let Moose hunt, and he hadn't been able to hunt or I hadn't let him hunt in probably 4 years because he was on the field trial circuit with a pro,
Mhm.
and he was cutting at like 750 to 900 pretty much the whole time. And it was awesome because I got to see him go do what he loves at a comfortable range and still check in even though he was running that big. And at the same time, the other dogs we had were a little bit closer working.
Mhm.
So we had this advantage when we had Moose and other dogs down where we never had birds getting out in front of us because he was out there.
Okay.
And we never had birds getting behind us because we had the closer dogs working. So it kind of worked in tandem to sort of pin birds between the dogs' ranges a little bit, which was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's pretty decorated dog too, yeah.
He absolutely is. Yeah, he's done just about everything he could do, and he's done everything I've asked of him. So, yeah, he's a special one. But his biggest claim to fame, in my opinion, is he went out and he won an SBHA,
Wow.
pointer trial for money against all the long tails and the pros down in South Carolina. And when he went down to that trial, the guy who was handling him, he called me and he said, "Hey man, I wanted to get your permission. It's going to cost you about $55 for me to enter him, but I won't be able to put Moose on the ground for 2 weeks if I don't enter him in this stake." I said, "Go for it." And he said, "I'm just going to use it like a training run. Don't expect anything." I was like, "I don't expect anything when you're running against, the top dogs in the country in the pointer game." And
Mhm.
he calls me back 2 days later. He's like, "I'm not sure I'd tell you this." I was like, "Oh, what happened? Did you lose my dog? Like, what's going on here?" He's like, "No, no, no. He won."
No way.
So pretty sweet. Yeah, pretty sweet thing. It's still kind of an ongoing running joke out on the East Coast with those
Yeah.
guys because a couple of guys whose dogs lost to him are still a little miffed that they lost to a short tail.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing that I was gonna talk about next is, like, pretty much like you said in the beginning, everything you've done is, really revolved around French Brittany's. So, maybe you could kind of highlight the breed, talk about some unique traits, what you love about them, because
Yeah.
it's not really a popular dog in the bird hunting world. They're small, you know?
Right. Yeah. People often see the size of the package and it's hard to see past that and to see the size of the heart in the dog.
Yeah.
And the good old saying, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of fight in the dog.
Yeah.
And that's, in my opinion, incredibly true of these little guys, these French Brittany's or Epinal Bretons in the hunting spaces. They've got every bit of go as a pointer or a setter. They don't have the legs to necessarily be as fast, but 10 minutes into a hunt, that doesn't matter. Because
Mhm.
if you're twice as fast and you don't check in, you're gone, you're lost. If you're twice as fast and you check in all the time, then the slower dog's going to be in front of you anyway. And
Mhm.
so, it really isn't a disadvantage in my opinion to be, to have the size that we have, especially for the hunter, right? I can pick up my dog with one hand and put him in the back of the truck. I can pick him up
Yeah.
with one hand and throw him in the dog box. I can't do that with a 60-pound setter or a 65-pound pointer or whatever. Excuse me. So yeah, first things first, the size of heart in the dog and it's breeding, it's genetics. So not every dog is the same, obviously. But when you get the right one, I think they have just as much potential, particularly as a hunting dog, as any other breed out there in the pointing dog world. I would say the other thing that I really love about these guys is their off switch. You take them in the
Mhm.
house and they'll sit down next to you, they'll jump on the couch with you, they'll chill out pretty well after about age 2, I should say.
Yeah.
They'll chill out pretty well, especially compared to, a pointer or a setter. In my experience, again, this is all just experiential and preferential, but I like the fact that when I look at them, there's something behind the eyes of a French Brittany,
Mhm.
right? There's something there that's working and wants to be with you. Whereas, training a lot of setters, sometimes it seems like there's one pea rolling around behind the eyes. And that 1P is a really good bird dog, but outside of that, they just really don't care about much
Hmm.
kind of thing. And I think that personality side of the French Brittany is also just a big plus, especially for the hunter,
Yeah,
or
I
the
agree.
average bird dog guy.
Yeah. Um, I he so I my French does have he does have an off switch. There's times where he'll get bored and you need to like take him outside and throw a bumper for him for a while or something. But I agree, they're definitely a little bit different. And he is a 35-pound dog going on 75 pounds. Like he thinks he's 75. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
They are strong. And I think it's the low to the ground kind of thing. But I think it's kind of the one thing I like and appreciate a lot is if we get into heavy cover hunting, there's no issue for him going into anything because he gets under all of it. Are you no? Do you? I guess when you're in heavy cover, do you have a pretty good experience with dogs that run far like your dogs do?
Yeah, they in heavy cover they'll tighten up a little bit,
Hmm.
and that's just fine with me in heavy cover because it takes me longer to get to them anyway.
Yeah,
But yeah, same thing like you were saying. Like I, first of all, I hate hunting cattails. Like it's my least favorite place to have a bird dog down.
yeah.
That being said, their size and agility allows them to maneuver through cattails better than almost any other breed, just because
Hmm.
they can get under this stuff rather than having to go through all this stuff. And it seems like they just do a little bit better job at getting to the birds that are in the cattails and stuff like that.
Yeah. The other thing that I've heard you say is that some dogs you could train with a 2x4, and a French Brittany you can't really do that because they're a little on the sensitive side. I don't know if I agree fully yet because my I don't think mine's very sensitive. But can you talk about that personality trait in them as
Yeah,
far
they're
as training goes?
yeah for sure. Um, you know, by and large, again, and it's dog to dog dependent, as you may be experiencing with your boy. But
Hmm.
um, generally speaking, they live to please you in a
Yeah,
different way than a pointer does. Right, a pointer lives to find a bird. If we're being honest about it, or the good ones live to find a bird.
yeah.
You let like I've been down to George Hickox and his lady friend Debbie's place in Georgia a few times. You
Hmm.
let even their like 12-week-old puppies. You open the kennels, they don't even stop to say hi. They're running to the Johnny house, a quarter mile away because they know where the quail live.
Mm.
Whereas a French Brittany, I let them out, and the first thing they do is jump up on me, say hi, and then they'll go play. Right?
Yeah.
It's just a different mindset in the dog, and I think because of that, particularly with bird work, you can be a lot heavier handed on a dog that is singularly focused on game.
Hmm.
Whereas a French Brittany, typically, in my experience, has kind of this dual focus of you and game. And because of that, if you're too heavy with them or too forceful with them or too hot on the collar with them, they're a lot quicker and easier to shut down
Mm.
around game than something like a pointer. Like you could roll a lot of, long tail dogs on the e-collar and
Hmm.
they'll stand back up and be like, all right, let's do it again. Right.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas if I've seen French Brittany's where guys who don't necessarily know what they're doing, are out hunting and they're on the collar because, their dog's too far out for them, 200 yards, whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden that dog won't leave their side, even though that dog knows there's birds out there because they've
Yeah.
made the mental decision not to get corrected versus wanting to go hunt. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what I mean by a little bit soft might be the wrong word, but I don't know. You know what I mean?
Well, it's almost like they'd rather see you happy in what they're doing than catch the bird for themselves.
Yeah.
He's definitely like that, and tend to I tend to shy away from the collar, not because I don't agree with. I like having a collar, but I usually use it for safety issues, like oh, he's getting too close to a busy road or and stuff like that, because they don't really need a lot. And
Right.
in your experience, and talk about this, I don't really have to use the collar a lot very much with him. Like he's once he learns a command, he's pretty good with it.
Yeah. No, for sure. Most dogs, I don't have to use the collar a whole lot in hunting, if at all. A dog like Moose, I do use it
Okay.
more often when I'm hunting, and that's very simply because when I'm developing a dog, I
Hmm.
teach them to handle off the collar.
Hmm.
So when I start to nick on the collar super low level, they'll start to bend. Eventually, it'll be a recall, but if I let off the collar, somewhere between them running away from me and running towards me,
Mhm.
they'll stop turning and continue on in that direction.
Okay.
So I use it to help them turn. So if I'm out in the wild bird field, I don't want to be singing at my dog like I would at a field trial,
Sure.
right? I'm pretty loud at a field trial when I'm on a horse. Um, if I do that around wild birds, they're probably out of the county by the time we
Yeah.
get there. So
Yeah.
I'll use a little nick on Moose when he's out at 750 yards and I need him to turn because we're going a different way. And it's easier that way. It's silent. It's super low level. It's just it's a reminder. It's not a correction. So I will use it for that when I have a bigger running dog in a wild bird hunting situation. But other than that, same as you. And if I'm trying to get him off a deer, get him away from a road or something like that, I'll
Yeah.
use it. And then obviously the GPS function is a godsend.
Yeah, especially when you're hunting
Yeah.
grouse.
Yeah. Yeah. Thick stuff, heavy stuff, whatever. It's nice to be able to find your dog that you can't see 5 foot in front of you.
Yeah. Um, what do you think about the breed's popularity in the United States? Do you think they're kinda coming around? Or are they still a little bit on the low side?
I would say broadly speaking, they're on the low side and probably always will be. Um, Kind of the caveat to that, and this is not necessarily meant to be a downer, but it might be to some people who hear it. If the AKC recognizes the breed, I think the breed is in trouble as a hunting breed and will gain popularity immediately as a show breed
Oh, yeah.
because of their disposition, their personality, their size, the ease with which you can travel with them and do stuff with them versus some of the bigger sporting dog breeds. Um, and because it's new, there's going to be money to be made there as, the first person to go and show them at the AKC, whatever top shows, things like that.
Yeah.
So I think that would be the one scenario where it would gain popularity in a negative sense,
Mhm.
perhaps. And the other thing is a lot of people that have these dogs, for better or for worse, doesn't really matter. It's your preference, your dog, uh, aren't necessarily serious hunters, trainers, field trialers. Whereas you don't see a whole lot of people with a pointer that aren't serious about bird hunting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? These
Yeah.
dogs kind of fit a niche where they're sort of, for a lot of people, they're pet first and hunt second.
Mhm.
And so because of that, there's a million and one pet breeds out there.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for a pet dog, this isn't the best pet dog in the world, probably. It is probably the best pet dog in the hunting sphere, right? Or in,
Yeah.
in the pointing dog sphere. And so it's this kind of middle ground niche where you can find something perhaps better on either end of the spectrum, but not something that's more complete, kind of in the middle of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Would
I
kind of
agree
be
with
how
that.
that's kind of how I would describe popularity versus how popular they can or will get.
Yeah. I agree with that. Um, as far as pointing goes, I think some pointers have it in them as soon as they're, a couple months old. I've been told that Brittany's, especially French Brittany's, might take a year or two to develop a point. Have you experienced that? A point.
Yeah, again, there's not as much immediate point as there is in like an English pointer, or I
Hmm.
guess what we probably ought to start calling the American pointer at this point.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and again, some of that is how we've bred these dogs, right? Or a lot of it is. Pointers, American pointers have been bred as kind of a singular focus animal, right? You
Hmm.
go you go down to the plantations in Georgia or out to the prairies in the Dakotas or Montana, and those dogs are they're a tool, right? They are owned to do a job. They're
Hmm.
not necessarily owned to be a house pet.
Right.
Um, so what's been bred in and out of those genetics is very singularly minded. They want a dog that can run fast and flashy with a cracking tail, a straight tail, and they can find birds and stand birds and look pretty.
Hmm.
In the French Brittany world, I would say for the majority of breeders, that's probably somewhere around fifth on the list,
Yeah.
right? Sadly, in my opinion. Um, a lot of people buy these dogs for color or for gender
Hmm.
or, for whatever the case might be, rather than saying who are the best bird finders and most natural bird dogs in the breed and how do we cement those genetics within the lines that we have here in the US with the
Hmm.
French Brittany, or how do we bring them in from other countries if we have to do that as well. And because of that, and because of the pet dog nature of the breed for a lot of people, I think strong pointing genetics has lapsed over the last 10 to 15 years as we've gone from, you know, 10 breeders that you could find online 20 years ago to now 110 or whatever,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, I do think there are some lines that are really strong with it and some lines that are really weak with it. They all have the ability to get there through training. But, like, for example, and this is not to necessarily toot my own horn, but maybe the genetics that my dad has developed over the last 15 years.
Mhm.
The litter I just had was a line breeding on moose. All 4 of their dogs had their natural ability test done by 6 months,
Oh,
right? So
wow.
they were point birds, standing birds, through the gun, retrieving, um, and that was all natural. I didn't train any of that. I just gave them exposure to a pile of quail at a
Yeah.
young age, and it came out very naturally. I've
Yeah.
had other dogs in for training from other genetics that it takes me, you know, I have to go back to the old school wing on a string to teach a dog that standing there is okay,
Mhm.
right? And get them to actually hesitate rather than point to then sort of develop that point.
Yeah.
And so, but again, I think a lot of that is genetic, and then a lot of it is exposure experience at a young age.
Do you ever find that it's like I so I haven't had we Pennsylvania stocks pheasants, so that's kinda his bread and butter, and I've used pigeons a couple times when he was young for bird introduction and for, like, gunfire stuff, that kinda thing. And that all went well. He never pointed any pigeons. He did pretty well with pheasants. He busted quite a few birds, and I think that's just the nature of a pheasant. They run. So, but I'm finding that he's pointing rabbits way more than he points birds. Is there something to that?
Yeah, a lot of that is genetics, man. In France, they count hare as game,
Okay.
and so they want their dog to point rabbits and birds
Yeah.
over there, and I think a lot of that carries through genetically. Um, I tend to try to break my dogs of that,
Hmm.
only because in competition, I'm in big trouble if my dog points a rabbit.
Okay.
Right,
Yeah.
that looks really bad to a judge. Why is your dog pointing fur, right? It's not a
Right.
German dog, you
Right.
know, or whatever. So, um, I don't endorse it. I don't, you know, try to do it, but it's very naturally in there genetically.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not planning on showing him or like doing any competitions with him. I thought about it initially, but I do so much stuff in the fall that I gotta pick and choose the things that I may get. I have so many hobbies, but I really did consider it. But I took him shed hunting a lot this year, and he's actually did okay at that. And I didn't find any on his own, but if you'd kind of be like, give him a direction, like back, and he'd do that. But I was finding out he was pointing so many rabbits, and I'm like, I got excited because I'm thinking, oh, he's pointing woodcock or something, and every time I'd like go kick the bushes, a rabbit would go out. So I guess I'm gonna be hunting rabbits this fall. But so that's pretty interesting that it's kind of carried over genetic. Um, is there to you? Have you trained any flushing dogs?
I have trained a very select few flushing dogs, but
Okay.
a couple, yeah.
Is there a giant difference in the way you train? To me, I think there is, but what is your take on it? I think there's a pretty big difference between training the two.
So foundationally, there's not a lot of difference because to have a bird dog, right, you need a few basic things. You have to have drive, you have to have a nose,
Hmm.
and you have to have, you know, bird intro and gun intro, you know, successfully and well done. And
Hmm.
then from there, the differences start, right? And the differences really are in how a dog handles. A flushing dog or retrieving dog really needs to be a highly obedience trained dog to stay close to you, to work with you, to be in the field right next to you. Whereas
Hmm.
a pointing dog in my desire, I almost went on the edge of disaster most of the time. Um, I
Yeah.
want them out there ranging because I have a pointing dog, so I don't have to walk, you know, 1,000 acres. Whereas if I had a flushing dog, I would have to walk each and every one of those acres with my dog.
Right.
Um, so the differences are there, kind of in how you condition things. It's a lot easier, in my opinion, to train a flushing or retrieving dog to do their job, to sit when a bird goes up because you're right there, proximity's there.
Yeah.
Whereas a dog that has a little bit of a black heart, that's a pointing dog, if they're pointing 500 yards away, they've got some time to goof around if they want to before you get to them.
Right.
You know what I mean? So the differences are there for sure, and you do have to train differently in how you do that.
Yeah.
Um, but the foundations are pretty similar, and then from there, I would say the obedient side is more important for a retrieving dog uh, than a pointing dog as far as having to stay and work with you.
Yeah. Do you have, any problems training your or your pointers to retrieve?
I haven't had any problem. I force break most of my trial dogs just because I
Mhm.
want it to be a command regardless of how hairy the situation might be.
Yeah.
Um, the hunting dogs, I haven't had to really force break any of them. Again, a lot of that is genetic. The other thing I'll say, and this is just me personally and not an endorsement for anybody else to necessarily do it this way, I don't let my young dogs retrieve until they're about 3 and through steadiness training
Mm.
because I don't want dueling pictures in their mind of I'm supposed to stand here and point this thing until you tell me not to, but
Yeah.
also I'm supposed to go get that thing when it takes off. And
Right.
so until I have steadiness finished, I don't really turn and focus on the retrieve work. As a puppy, I let him retrieve, catch a couple quail. I'll throw a bumper and stuff with them, but I'm not doing formal, retrieving or shot birds, that I want them to go get and bring back until we're done with steadiness work.
Yeah. What are some mistakes in the bird dog training stuff that you think people could avoid more often? Because this is something you learn from when you're
Yeah.
training your dogs. You can look back on. I remember hearing you in one of your podcasts talk about Moose and saying like he did really well in spite of all the mistakes that I made.
Yeah. No, for sure. Like with Moose, he's a great example of a dog with, there's a little bit of rebel in him,
Hmm.
right? And because for the first 6 months of his life, he was picking up a pheasant wing every day because that's what I had to work with.
Hmm.
Um, he has more of a tendency than my other dogs to get a little bit off, off course, if you will, and
Hmm.
do his own thing. Whether it's there's birds walking around and he knows that we're 10 minutes behind, and he might play with them for a while before he sees us coming and decide to point.
Hmm.
That's happened from time to time. It's not normal, but excuse me. But I would say, you know, one of the things that's really not helpful for training a pointing dog, especially at a young age, is birds in the mouth.
Okay.
Um, Having birds in the mouth reduces their desire to point 110%.
Mm.
As one of my mentors likes to put it, he said, "If you had $1,000 paycheck and $1,000,000 paycheck, which one would you choose?"
Yeah.
Right? And for the dog having the bird in their mouth, right? We're building all of this based on prey drive.
Hmm.
Ultimately, they want the bird.
Right.
Pointing is just basically them stopping before the bird goes, right? So you're just training them to be cautious is really
Right.
what pointing is. So genetically, throughout all of history for these dogs, the biggest desire, the biggest payday is to get that bird in their mouth.
Hmm.
The more often they get that without doing their job, the less likely they are to do their job. If
Uh,
if you got the same paycheck week after week, whether you showed up to the office or not, I don't think any of us would probably go to the office all that often. You know what I mean?
right.
If I could
Right.
be in the hunting field and still be getting paid from work,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Right.
Um,
So that I guess that makes sense when you have a that's one of the reasons I guess people are always say don't shoot flushed birds after maybe a year, their first season or whatever, just so they get the idea like you did the wrong thing. You're not
Absolutely.
getting the paycheck. Okay. That makes sense. You hear all this stuff. Like I said, I'm not a bird dog expert, but you hear some of the things on a podcast where, and I'm just talking about bird dog podcasts in general. uh, Why can't I let them? Like it makes sense that they shouldn't. Well, you're not teaching them how to point, but that's the the true reason why. The other thing I hear a lot is things about correction. So if my dog does something wrong, all right. Well, talking about retrieving is the easiest thing. If I throw a bumper and he runs as soon as I throw the bumper instead of healing and or woeing until that thing's down, do I correct him in the moment just by saying no or nicking him with a collar, or what is a correction to you?
Say that scenario one more time so I can process it all the way
So,
through.
all right, so I throw a bumper out and he runs even before, like as I'm starting to toss the bumper, instead of woeing or staying or healing, whatever it happens to be. At what is a correction, and at what point do I do it? Do I do it while he's running for the bird? Do I, when he gets back, do I say, no, you did that wrong? Where does that come in?
So, a couple of things first. Does said dog whoa when he's 50 yards away from you running around in the yard if you say whoa?
Uh,
If the dog's not doing that, then the dog doesn't really know whoa well enough to use it as a correction yet.
yeah,
And in that case, you're just throwing words out there hoping something works, right? You're just
right,
throwing spaghetti at the wall.
right.
Same thing with heel. If your dog doesn't heel reliably in the yard before you go out and start using it in drills,
Mm-hmm.
that's not the dog's fault. That's our fault as a trainer, not finishing that process before we put it into another scenario.
Okay.
And that those are important things to keep in mind because like one of the I'll come back to what we were talking about here really quick, but
No, please too.
like first year dogs,
Uh-huh.
super common to have a handler out there hunting his first year dog, screaming "whoa," as the dog's chasing a bird or busts a bird or whatever,
Yeah.
and maybe even using the collar on him. First of all, I never train whoa before first year of birds.
Okay.
Right. I want some of that pointing to be natural progression of them learning from the bird,
Yeah.
not just wowing on my command when they think there might be a bird.
Yeah.
Because it teaches them how to be cautious. It teaches them how to work scent. It teaches them the difference between old and new scent in a way that I can't because it's their nose, not mine, that we're using.
Right.
So these guys are using the whoa command out in the field because they think their dog ought to know it because they tried it a couple times at the house before they headed for the hunt fields,
Yeah.
whatever the case might be. That dog has no freaking clue why it's being corrected, except for it sees a bird and now it's getting some electricity and it's getting
Mm-hmm.
yelled at. What association is that dog going to make?
Right.
Not with the command that it hasn't learned yet, right? It doesn't know
Right.
that part yet.
Mm-hmm.
Now guess who the bad guy is the
Yeah.
bird, right? So now
Right.
now you're teaching a dog that, problem scenarios pop up around birds. Now you're developing a tentative dog on game
Right.
because we were too fast to try and use woe in the field.
Yeah.
So getting back to your bumper scenario, if your dog does know heel or whoa or whatever command you're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
as soon as he makes a mistake, I would say whoa, and if he doesn't stop, then use the correction, of the collar.
Okay.
Don't let him get to the prize
Right.
before you correct him because now the picture's been painted that if he gets back to you and then you correct him, now what are you correcting?
The retrieve. Yeah.
You're correcting the retrieve and or his recall.
Right.
So now coming back to you is the problem with something in his mouth. So now what's he going to do the next time? Probably go the other way with something in his mouth because he got in trouble for bringing it back to you.
Yeah. So I guess in this scenario, my little guy's really fast, and he will heal 90% of the time out back. If I get to a point, well, he does not heal for my wife or my daughter. He will heal for me. If he sees them with a bumper and they go to throw it, he's out. So occasionally, if I'm playing with him, if we're like 20, 30 minutes in of just retrieving, he I I did the thing in the beginning with retrieving where I did, 5 throws and just let him be hungry for it the next time. Now he could probably go out in the backyard and do it for 3 hours and not be done yet. But if he gets to a certain time where he gets tired, he doesn't always heal. Like he'll want to go for it. And oftentimes I can't stop him from getting there, and he knows heal and he knows whoa and he knows stay, those kind of things. Most of the time he still gets to the bumper before I'll say no while he's running out there. I'm always like, well, what do you do when they bring it back to you? I guess you still have to be like, good dog, you brought it back. I don't know. Do you just say nothing?
Yeah, I would make it a non-praise event. You know,
Okay.
you messed up. So are you saying heel or whoa before you throw the bumper?
Usually I'll heal him before I throw the bumper. I'll be like, Rue, heal. He heals, and I'll toss it. Like I said, 90% of the time. And in the beginning of a session, he will do it. No problem. It's when he starts to get tired or like he's overly excited, he will just start running as soon as I get ready to throw that thing. And then the thing's already in the air. He's almost to it. And I'll say no while he's on his way to the bumper. Usually, I try not to say anything when he gets back because I feel like the moment's gone. But
Yeah. If it were me, I would probably, when you get up there before you throw it, I would say whoa,
yeah,
and put him in a whoa, a command whoa, right? Where
yeah,
the next thing that comes is a correction. Get rid
yeah,
of the get rid of the word no. That means nothing at this point. His mind is gone. He's chasing. He's not listening.
yeah.
Right. So once you said whoa before you throw the bumper, then if he moves, you can go straight to the correction on the collar
Correction. Okay.
and stop him that way. Because that'll stop him a lot faster than you chasing him or hollering or whatever the case might be.
That's they get to a point where the talking to him doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah, when their mind is turned on for whatever they're pursuing, whether it's game or a bumper or something, they're usually not listening for your voice at that point. They've made a decision, that there's something to go get.
Yeah, and I've been able to tell like some of his body language. In the beginning, he is very interested in me and the whole scenario. After a period of time, he's only interested in getting that bumper. Like he's just you can tell he's like revved up. I don't know. He does have quite a bit of drive, so maybe that has to do a little bit of something with it. But so transitioning to kind of a hunt scenario, what are some things that you can do to make your dog to help your dog be successful in the field, finding birds, maybe it's habitat or those kinds of things in your experience.
Yeah, I would say it starts with training, but also some of it's just natural intelligence of the dog. It can be trained, but a dog that has it more naturally is gonna be easier to develop this in. When I'm training a young dog, in particular before year 1, right, I'm using objectives to plant birds in that would simulate something similar to what they're gonna find a wild bird in when we go
Hmm.
hunting,
Hmm.
right? So I'm not just putting a quail in the middle of a cut hayfield. I train in a cut hayfield. I'll put it on the edges or I'll put it in the bush, somewhere in
Hmm.
the middle or whatever the case might be, and then I'll let the dog go run, and early on, the dog's just kinda running sort of to run, right? They don't really understand yet that they're hunting
Yeah.
until the 3rd, 4th, 5th day in a row or whatever that they found a bird out there. Now they're out there because they know birds are there. And so using kind of an objective mindset for a young dog, "Hey, I see something that's not the same as everything else around here. That's probably where, dad put the bird today," or whatever, right? Then when I go to first year hunting, so we just did this in Montana, me and Jake actually. I
Okay.
don't I don't put my young dogs down and just let them rip for 3, 4 hours year 1.
Hmm.
I'll run my older dogs in the morning. It was hot when we were out there, so we'd break. We hit the pub from 3 to 5 or something like that. Then
Hmm.
we'd go back out as it got cooler, and we'd look for shaded areas or crossing routes between kind of nesting grounds and food areas,
Hmm.
and we'd put dogs down just to run 50 yards down to a set of hedgerows or something like that. And we'd
Yeah.
work those hedgerows for 15 minutes and then come back to guarantee success, for the young dogs so they don't get into the mode if I'm just out here running around, but there's always birds.
Right.
And then if they find birds the first few times we're out there on that hedgerow, guess where they're going the first time we let them out of the box at the beginning of the hunt?
Yeah.
That's that same hedgerow. Whether it's 20 yards or 200 yards, they're going towards an objective where a bird ought to be or likely will be.
Yeah. That makes sense. For you, how many states do you get to hunt a year?
I probably get to hunt 3 states a year, generally speaking. Montana is sort of a staple. I try to get to Iowa for late season pheasants, go see family after Christmas.
Hmm.
Um, and then one other bucket list. I've got a group of about 10 people that, either have dogs from me or my dad, who have trained with us that I invite on a bucket list hunt every year. So, like, last year we did Nebraska, for chickens and Sharpies. The year before we did sage grouse in Wyoming.
Wow.
The year before that we did, sage Sharpies and Huns in Montana. And this year we're doing, the Northwoods in Minnesota.
Oh, so
So,
cool.
and then next year the plan is to go to Arizona for desert quail. But that's a little bit of a journey. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
That's something about upland hunting is the opportunity to hunt so many different things and every kind of terrain and habitat. I think that's pretty awesome. You're hunting mostly public areas?
It just sort of depends on the year and the situation. Most of the time it's public, but like 3 years ago when we were in Montana, we started on public and it was a dry, hot year.
Mm,
Weren't having a lot of success. And one of the guys that comes with us from time to time, he's the biggest chatterbox on planet Earth. He could have a conversation with a rock
Yeah.
kind of guy. So he breaks off from lunch and says, "I'll be back. I'm going to run down to the local coffee shop." All right, we'll see you in a little bit, Mark. Um, he comes back is like, "Hey, this rancher has about 15,000 acres. He says we can hunt."
Awesome. Let's
So
do it.
for the next 2 days, we ended up hunting, this rancher's 15,000 acres that nobody else was on, and
That's awesome.
had a ton of success because the guy was like, "This is where I see the sharp tails, in the mornings and evenings when I'm out there. This is where I see the sage grouse crossing in the evenings." So we got,
Mhm.
some sort of insider knowledge that year. And then last year in Nebraska, we signed up for an Airbnb, and through one of the podcasts I did, it was the land trust guys
Mhm.
who do the Airbnb for hunting.
Yeah.
So through that, it just happened to be that the Airbnb that I booked in Nebraska was one of the properties that they work with.
Oh, nice.
And so in conversation, the guy was like, "Dude, that's like one of the properties that we work with. Here's the owner's number. Give him a call. He might let you just hunt the ranch."
That's cool.
And so I gave him the call, and so we hunted that 10,000 private acres last year in Nebraska instead of public. But
That's awesome. Is there something that you look for when you're looking for public spaces to hunt? Like in particular, or just what's the biggest or closest to your wherever you're staying?
I usually look for kind of last year's uh, talked about hot spots a little bit, and just kind of normal, bird counts and stuff like that. So, it's no secret that the Valentine, Nebraska area is famous for Sharpies and chickens,
Mhm.
right? So I started there, and then we started just kind of, I looked for an Airbnb first. Can I get anything in the area to sleep 9, 10 people? And then from there, we'll kind of start to pick our spots and just kind of use the season and the cover as needed. So like last year, all the Sharpies were out in the sand hills.
Mm.
None of them were down in the prairies. Whereas the year before, I guess they were all in the prairies and the woods. So it was just, year to year things change based on what, the weather conditions were and the food conditions and stuff like that for the birds. Um, and then typically speaking, I get a fair bit of insider knowledge here and there about, hey, over in this area is kind of where I'd look. And so
Mhm.
I'll start from that. I'm not taking anybody's pins or sharing anybody's pins, but you know, this broad area is kind of where I'd start honing in. And so then I just go look for, terrain change, water, food, shelter, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite upland species to put your dogs on?
I would probably say sharptail.
Yeah.
Are my favorite. Just, because it's more of a covey bird, which I think it
Yeah,
helps
that's
it helps develop a dog's nose when you get that
okay.
much of a scent bomb.
Yeah.
Um, Huns are a little bit flightier, in my opinion, than
Mhm.
Sharpies,
Mhm.
so they're a little bit harder to pin. Pheasants are like my least favorite.
Yeah,
Um,
they're kinda tough.
they're yeah, they don't teach a young dog how to point very well because they run, and they don't keep an old dog very well held together because they run. So
Yeah.
it's just not necessarily the most conducive species to developing or maintaining a dog as far as steadiness and stuff.
Yeah. I know I did some shed hunting in, Northern PA this year, and I don't know, in 2 or 3 days, we ran into, like, 30 grouse, and I don't have that many in my area. There's some in my area, but not a whole lot. It was so different than pheasants because he's used to, like, if he ends up pointing at a pheasant, it's usually, like, 30 yards in front of him. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, he knows to not go a whole lot further than that. He's pinned a couple where he, like, happened to, catch a crosswind and turn and pins it at 5 feet or something, which is awesome. I love when he can do that, but I did notice the grouse, how much tighter they hold. He was, like, putting his nose on some of them before because he didn't really know what they were yet, you know? That's cool when you get to see them, like, learn something like that, their face when they're like, "Oh, that was
absolutely.
that was a bird."
Yeah, for a young dog, I love woodcock too because they just don't move.
Yeah,
It can be a good or a bad thing depending on the dog, I guess. But I like a bird that's gonna sit until it flushes.
yeah. I, I've been trying there's not a flight yet this fall because 'cause it's been kind of hot the last couple weeks, so, but he did actually those were some of the first birds he pointed were, woodcock because they hold so tight. So this is a part of the podcast where I like to this is my favorite part. So, if you could tell me one memorable competition and a memorable hunt that you just loved every minute of?
I'll start with the hunt because competition, there's too many to pick from off the top of my head, so I have to think about it a little bit. Most memorable hunt was Thanksgiving morning of 2017, I believe,
Mhm,
17 or 18. Um, I went out. We had family stuff going on, late that morning, Thanksgiving lunch, et cetera, et cetera. And
mhm.
I asked my wife, I said, "Hey, do you mind if I go hunt?" She said, "You better be back in time." And I said, "All right, no problem." So I went out at sunrise, out to a piece of property that a friend of mine's father-in-law owns. Um, just me and Moose went out there for about an hour and a half, and in that hour and a half, the first thing we hit, like 10 minutes into the hunt, was a covey of about 15 bobwhites. Um, Shot a double out of that. Went on about another 20 minutes or so, and he stuck a rooster right on a fence row. Got that. Started heading back to the truck because I knew I was cutting it a little bit close, and he just slams on point. The heel spin in the dirt kind of point.
Mhm.
The one that everybody wants to see at least once from their dog in their dog's lifetime.
Yeah.
Um, Slams on point. I walk up there expecting to have a rooster or a hen or something get up, and it was a gobbler.
No way.
So this thing, I'm like, 3 feet away from it, going to kick it up, and it takes off like a helicopter. And I think I browned my pants a little bit, out of surprise. And in Iowa, and I had my turkey tag. In Iowa, you can shoot in the fall. You can shoot a turkey over a point,
Yeah,
over a dog. In the spring, you can't use a dog.
correct.
So,
That's
so,
same here. Yeah.
so I shoot, but I'm shooting 6 shot, right? Not
Right,
turkey shot.
right.
Um, so this bird, it kind of hobbles a little bit, and then it just soars like 300 yards out to this little like grass strip in the middle of a cornfield. So we go walking out there. I send Moose. He takes off like a shot out of a cannon. He goes over there and he locks up on point. And so I get up there again. Lifts. I shoot it, kill it, lands about 30, 40 yards away from me in this cut cornfield. And Moose went out and retrieved it and drug back this turkey by the neck, you
No
know,
way.
as a little 32-pound dog. So now I've got 2 quail, a rooster, and a turkey for Thanksgiving. Throw them all in my bird bag, head back to the truck, go home, clean the turkey, cook the turkey with my family for Thanksgiving lunch. So that was probably my favorite, hunting story. Just a short little window, kind of hitting the Iowa trifecta, if you will.
That's
Um,
probably one of the best hunting stories I've had on this podcast
yeah,
yet. That's awesome.
yeah, it was super sick, and to see that little 32, 34 pound dog, hauling a full turkey back by
I
the and
love
he,
that.
he tried for a while. He was trying to figure out, how do I get my mouth around the breast or the back or whatever. Couldn't figure it out. Finally got frustrated, just picked it up by the neck and backpedaled to me.
Oh, man, I wish I could see that. That's awesome.
So it was sweet. So
Very cool.
um, that'd be my favorite, yeah, hunting story. Favorite competition story. Um, I'll give you two. One of moose and one of non-moose. Um, the one of moose is, I sent him out with George Hickox for the summer. This had been 5, 6 years ago, something like that.
Mhm.
He gets done with summer camp out there in North Dakota. Me and a buddy, I was living in Philly at the time. Me and a buddy drive out, pick him up in North Dakota, head straight to Iowa for a field trial. And Moose was one win away from his field championship in the UKC. And so we get back, and the first run is braces, and he goes over the hill. He's probably 100 yards in front of us. And the judge who was evaluating Moose, so there are two judges in a brace, right? One follows one dog, one follows the other. The judge who was supposed to be following me, when he got over the hill at about 100 yards, he looked at me and he said, he's running too big, and he DQ'd Moose for being like 100 yards out, right? So now I'm upset because I like a big running dog. He's just over a hill.
Right,
We haven't even crested the hill yet. How do you know he's not standing on the bottom of the next hill or whatever on point?
right.
Which he was actually on point when I got to him. But anyway, he was picked up, so I was frustrated. I talked to the other judges. I also happened to be a judge in that venue. And I was like, guys, this is nonsense. Like, if we don't have the ability to crest a hill to see if a dog's standing on point before we make a decision,
Right.
we're not fit to be judges. I didn't say it to that guy, but I said it to a couple of my buddies who are judges. Anyway, then he goes to run in the solo run, and later that morning, early afternoon or whatever, and he cruises. He's out 250 yards. You see him cutting across the hill and stop. And so we get up there, and he's standing there, and we were using Hungarian partridge for this trial. It was a liberated bird trial, but we were using Huns.
Okay.
And we get up there, and there was 3 Huns that had covied up. They were sitting, just in this little bush.
Mm-hmm.
They took off. The gunner shoots it. Send Moose. He goes. He brings it right back to hand. We're good to go. Then we cut up, and he takes off all the way up this fence row. And these are only 15-minute runs, mind you,
Mm-hmm.
right? So not a lot of time. Takes off up this line, and I know I have to find him within like 3 minutes of the 15-minute time period ending, or he's out of contention or whatever.
Right.
So 15 minutes gets there, and we're probably 300 yards from the end of the field. And the judge said, let's just walk it back. He's probably staying in a bird somewhere between here and there. If he is, it's up to you if you want to use it or not. So we get up there. We're about 100 yards from the trucks, right? And Moose is standing there, pretty as can be. And the judge goes, I told you. And I was like, I know. And he's like, do you want to use it? And so I asked him, I said, do you think I should? And he said, if I were you, I probably would. In other words, if you want to seal the deal that you're going to win this thing, you probably want a second find.
Yeah.
I was like, all right. So bird gets up, and I don't like having my dogs have too many retrieves,
Mm-hmm.
in a competition run.
Mm-hmm.
Just the more birds in your mouth, the less put together they become, in my opinion.
Okay.
Again, that $1 million payday, the more often they get it, the less likely they are to do the rest of their job.
Right.
Bird gets up. To our advantage, it flies straight at the trucks and all the other people standing there watching us. So I had to fire a safety shot in the air instead of shooting the bird, call
Oh,
our
nice.
Moose, bring him back. That was the very last run or second to last run of the day or something like that. So we get done. Moose won the blue ribbon, finished his field championship that day. And it all was just, so perfectly sequenced from one judge unnerving me with his decisions
Yeah.
to the next judge appreciating, a different kind of dog and letting Moose kind of go do his thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it all just kind of came together in that one moment for him. So
It's such a unique world in the hunting space, because there's something to do. Like, you could shoot competition archery or 3-gun or something like that. The dog thing is so unique, and it's cool because you get a little buddy with it too. Yeah. I really appreciate you coming on. I think we're gonna have to make this maybe an annual thing or something where we're talking. This will come out sometime in October, because our upland seasons kind of get underway in PA. Well, I'm in Pennsylvania, like I said, in Pennsylvania. So we kind of get underway. Our grouse season opens, I think, like the 19th of October, and then pheasants opens towards the end. So this is kind of getting people revved up to get out there and shoot some birds and get their dogs out in the fields. Where are the best places for people to find you at?
yeah, so I mean, you can find me on Facebook at Redemption Bird Dogs or at the Upland Disciple podcast. You can listen to the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, iTunes stuff. Um, you can find them on Instagram with both of those things, the Upland Disciple podcast and Redemption Bird Dogs. And then working on right now a website that will be under Redemption Bird Dogs. I think it's .com. It might be .org, but we're still in construction phase. But that will have Redemption Bird Dogs, my breeding kennel, so Sinbuster Bretons, and then also the Upland Disciple podcast will be there, all on one website, kind of put together.
Cool. You heard him. Find him there. Appreciate you. Thank you so much. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed Josh. I know I learned a lot from this podcast, so check him out at Redemption Bird Dogs. You can follow us at incamp_podcast on Instagram. You can find us on Apple and Spotify podcasts and iHeartRadio. If you would, give us a follow. If not, just keep coming back and listening. I really appreciate you tuning into the show every week. It means a lot to me. Thanks again. This is In Camp Podcast.